Hi, and welcome to part 3 of this Managing Active Directory with PowerShell tutorial series. So in the first video, we've created our forest. In the second video, we've found out how to manage OUs. So we've been able to create OUs and see our organizational units that we've created and delete them as well. So in this video, we're going to be looking at managing users. So we're going to go over how to create a user, how to move a user, how to edit a user, and how to delete them. Now, I actually already have a series that does cover this specifically. It's a much longer series. It's a video series. I believe it's like 9 or 10 videos. And it goes over how to automate this process in Active Directory using a CSV file. So I would definitely watch this video, see the basic commands. And if you want to know how to automate it, I will be putting a link to that playlist in the description. It'll go over the creation of the CSV file, how to create users based on that file, how to modify users based on that file. It's definitely a pretty cool video. It's very useful if you're trying to automate your users with your HR department or with your organization when there's new employees. So let's actually get started in managing users. So we just have our blank Active Directory here. We don't have any OUs since we've deleted them all, and we don't have any users. So what we're going to first do is I'm actually going to create 2 OUs. This way we can just move users from one OU to the other and specify an OU during user creation just to give us a little bit more flexibility. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some code from our last video here, and I'm just going to create 2 OUs. So I'm going to create one for Toronto here, and then I'm going to create one for, let's just do New York here. And then that should actually be pretty good. And then we will just go ahead and we will just make sure that we have our OUs. Yeah, so we have New York and we have Toronto here. So let's go ahead and let's get started with creating our users. So the first way that we can create a user is by using, well, both ways is going to be using the same commandlet, but I'm going to be showing you 2 different ways that we can create users. So first, we can just use the commandlet as is. So we have new-ad user, and then we can specify a bunch of properties. Now, this has a lot of properties in it. Now, most of the times when you're creating user accounts, you're probably not going to be populating all these properties. I'm going to be going over the more common properties that you will probably be using. Um, and if you need to use more, definitely you'll be able to see what properties are able to be set with this commandlet. So first, we're going to do the surname, which is going to be the last name. So let's just do Smith here. And then we can do a given name. So let's just do Richard here. And then we can do name, which is just going to be Richard Smith. And then what we're going to do, I like to do a tilde. I think it's called a tilde. It's just like a backtick. Sorry, it's a backtick. So for me on a English keyboard, it's just the key to the left of the one, and then you could hit the enter or carriage return and continue on entering your parameters on another line. Just this way, you guys can see all the parameters and properties that I'm setting, because there's going to be quite a bit here. So we can do a display name, which that I usually like to set to the same thing. And then we're going to do a SAM account name, which is the username of the account, which I like to do just the last name and the first initial. Again, I kind of go over how to generate usernames in that playlist that I mentioned earlier. So if you guys definitely want to go check that out, there's some very useful information there. So the user principal name, we're just going to do that. And then we have at jacked.ca. And then we're going to do title, which is the job position. So let's just put it as a programmer here. And then let's do a department, which we're going to do IT. And then we are going to set up the, um, let's set up the city, and we're going to set that to Toronto for now. And then we are going to go ahead and we are going to do state. Let's do that to Ontario. And then country is a little bit different. You can't just put in Canada. You actually have to do CA, which is for Canada. So you have to put the country code. And then let's go ahead and let's put in an employee ID. And let's just do 001. So a very simple employee ID. Now there's one last, two other properties that we have to set here, which is going to be the account password. Now the account password, you can't just enter a string here and set that as the password. What you actually have to do is we can do a open and close parentheses here, and we're going to have to call the convert to secure string, and then pass in the parameter of string, and then go ahead and put in test 1, 2, 3, 4 exclamation mark as plain text and force. And then let's do enabled, and we want to set that to true. And see how I do this colon here? When it's a Boolean value, I just find it easy to just do it this way. So we do have enabled is going to be true, because by default, if you leave this out, the user is actually disabled by default. So if we run this line here, we're going to see that it works. And then if we go into Toronto, we don't see our user, but in our users, we actually see Richard Smith. So by default, if you don't specify an OU, it will just put it in that users folder here, that users container or users organizational unit. So what we need to do is we need to create the user in that specific area. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another backtick here, and then there's a property called path. And then the path, we can then do get AD organizational unit, filter, and then we can do our filter just like we saw in the last video. And we could do it where it's equal to Toronto, because we know that the city is Toronto. Now, of course, if this was like in a script format, you would be able to actually use variables. So if it's reading it in from a CSV and all your organizational units are based on the city that they're in, well, you would use the city variable in here for it to find the organizational unit that it belongs in. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're actually just going to go ahead and delete this user here. And we are going to rerun this. And if we reopen up our AD and let's just refresh the users, we do not see it in here. If we go into Toronto and refresh it, we do see our user there. So that does work. And if we open up our user, we can actually see the first name, the last name, the display name. We can see the address, city, state, and country. And then in the organization, we can see the job title and department. So we can definitely see there is a lot of options that we can do here. So the next thing that I want to show you guys is, let me just actually delete this user here. We're just deleting it through Active Directory because I want to do the deletions at the end just to kind of keep that order that we have. So another way that we can go ahead and create a user is very similarly to how we did the organizational units, and that is creating a hash table of values here. So we have our AD user is equal to the @ symbol and open and close brackets here. And what we can do is we can actually just um, really kind of put all of these as parameters here. So let's just do surname equals that. Given name is going to be equal to Richard. Name is going to be this. So as you can see, like it's definitely quite easy to change this into getting it to be just a hash table here just by taking the parameterized version of the commandlet. It's a little bit of work, but a lot less work than typing it all out. So once we have all of this in here, should just take me a little bit longer. And again, the account password, we can do the same thing even in the hash table. So that is awesome. And what I like to do, I like to always have the enabled as the last possible option. And then we have the path. Perfect. So that'll be that. And then what we can do here is we can just simply do new AD user and then at AD user. And then if we put this in here, we can see that we get no errors. And once we go into our Active Directory, we see our user. So that is awesome. So I would, again, always recommend, similarly to the OUs, I would always recommend doing it in a hash table format. You're going to see in the video where we automate it, it definitely is a little bit of a hash table situation. We actually build hash tables dynamically in that one. We do quite a few cool little things with that one. We build our own commandlets. So once again, that description is going to be down below. Now that we've created our user, now we need to actually fetch our user, because fetching our user is actually going to be very useful for modifying our user, moving our user, and also deleting our user. I always like to fetch the user first and then perform the actions on it. So let's go ahead and let's store our value here as just, let's do get AD user as our variable, and we're just going to do get AD user. And then we are going to specify a identity, and we are going to put in the username or the SAM account name. And then what we can do, so if we just run this commandlet here, we can see that we get some of the values. We don't get everything back. So similarly to the OU, what I like to do is always add the property and put a star to get all the properties. And then once I grab that, we can actually see we get a lot more information on that user that we can then use and be able to pull out reports or do a lot of other things on that Active Directory user. So now that we have our user assigned to a variable, and we can get it at any time by referencing that variable, what we can now do is we can actually change the information. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it the hash table method in this case, but do know that you could still just do it using the properties. So let's go ahead and let's create a hash table here of AD mod, and we're going to do the @ symbol and open and close brackets, and let's do city, state, and let's do country. And country, we're going to set it to the US. State, we're going to set it to New York. And city, we're going to set it to New York. And then what we're going to do, in order to change our city, state, and country of our user that we want to do, we can just do get AD user, our value that is, the get AD user variable. And we are going to pipe that to set AD user and then the @AD mod. And then if we run this here, oops, it would help if we run all of that there. We see no errors. We go into our Active Directory. We click on our user. We go into the address and we now see New York, New York, and United States. Now, once again, we are still in the Toronto OU, so we have not moved the user. That's because we can't move the user using the set AD user commandlet. The way that we move our users is actually by just doing get our AD user variable, and then we're going to pipe that to move AD object. And then as a property, we have a target path. Now, you can do this in a hash table, and in fact, we will do it via a hash table. So let's go move AD, and we're going to set that to a open and close bracket there. And let's do target path. And we are going to do get AD organizational unit, filter, name is going to be like, and we are going to do, it's going to be like New York. And let's do move AD. And then if we run this here, we should see no errors once again. And if we refresh our Toronto OU, we see that the user is no longer there. And in our New York OU, the user is there. So that worked. So we always have to remember, if we just want to modify properties of our user, the set AD user commandlet is going to be good. If we want to move our AD user, it's going to be the move AD object commandlet, which this could be used to move computers or users or groups, as a matter of fact, as well. So now the only thing that we really have to do is remove a user, but what I want to do before is how to actually reset a password. So this is actually a little bit tricky. What we would want to do is we are going to want to do I always forget this command because I don't use it very often. Set AD account password. And then what you want to do there, so what we could do here is we get, first we need to get our AD user again, because our AD user command is going to be different since we are in the New York OU. So now if we do our get AD user, and then we pipe that to set AD account password, and then we have a old password, a new password. All we are going to do is going to do a new password. And again, you still have to do the convert to secure string here. And we're going to set this to password 1234. And then as plain text, force. And then we are going to set that to reset, so we don't need to enter the old password. So this is simply going to be resetting the password for that AD user. So if we run that here, we get no errors. And of course, the password is reset. So a good way to kind of check that here. Now, I did not set that the user would have to change the password at next logon, so we don't actually have that there. But if we go to the attribute editor here, and we go to password last set, so let me just try to find that here. So password last set is at October 16th at 4:21, and right now it is 4:22. So it just turned 4:22, so we can definitely see that was good. And then the user was actually created at 4:14. So we know that the password originally was set at 4:14. So we can definitely confirm that it's been reset. And another way that we can do it is we can actually just do the same thing again. And then if we go back into the user and we go into object, the last time it was modified was at 4:22:47. If we go to the attributes, we can do password last set at 4:22. So we can see that the password is being reset. Now, the way that we can do the change password at next logon, of course, is just going to be get AD user, pipe that to set AD user, change password at logon, and we put that to true. And then if we go and click on that here, we can now see that the user will now have to change their password at next logon. So if ever you do password reset through through PowerShell, definitely make sure to always make sure that you do that change password at logon if you want them to be able to change their password, if that is necessary in your scenario. So now to remove the user. So to remove the user, very similarly to the OU, we can just get our user variable and then pipe that to remove AD user. And then once again, we have this confirm. And if we set the confirm to false, it will not prompt us. It will just remove it. So if we go back in our Active Directory, New York is empty, Toronto is empty, and users, we do not see our user anywhere. So that is perfect. And that actually wraps it up for all the commands to manage our users. So once again, I'm going to be putting the link to the playlist on how to automate all these tasks through PowerShell with a CSV file from your HR department or however you store your employee data. So be sure to check that out, and I will see you on the next video. On the next video, we're going to be managing groups. And then we're probably going to get into the cool project of automating those groups for our users. So please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you on the next video.